The blood on Katherine Brennan's white dress had faded to rust over the 3 days she had been walking, and when she stumbled into Bentonville, Arkansas, that scorching August afternoon in 1878, every eye turned toward her like she was a ghost risen from the grave. She collapsed at the water trough outside the general store, her hands shaking as she cupped the cool liquid to her cracked lips, and within minutes a crowd had gathered around her, their whispers sharp as broken glass. "That is her," someone hissed. "The woman from the Holbrook Ranch." "I heard her husband went mad," another voice added. "Shot himself right in front of her." Katherine kept her eyes down, letting the water drip from her chin. She had walked 70 miles from the ranch where her husband Thomas had painted the bedroom walls red with his own blood while she slept in the next room. The marshal had questioned her for 2 days, before finally accepting that she had not pulled the trigger, but the damage was done. In 3 counties, people knew her name and they knew her story, and they had already decided what she was. The preacher arrived before she had finished drinking. Reverend Samuel Morrison was a tall man with silver hair and eyes like flint, and he carried himself with the certainty of someone who believed God spoke directly through his mouth. He stood over Katherine, his shadow falling across her like a judgment, and when she finally looked up at him, his lips were pressed into a thin line of disapproval. "You are the widow Brennan," he said. It was not a question. Katherine stood on trembling legs, her dress hanging loose on her frame. She had not eaten in 2 days. "I am. I have heard about you." His voice carried across the street, and more people stopped to listen. "You are the woman whose husband took his own life, the woman who drove a good man to such desperation that he saw no other path." "I did not drive him anywhere," Katherine said quietly. "Thomas was sick in his mind. The war broke something in him that never healed." "A good wife would have been his healing," Reverend Morrison declared. "A good wife would have provided the comfort and sanctuary a man needs." "But you were not that, were you? You were damaged goods when he married you, and you remained damaged goods until the end." The words hit her like physical blows. Katherine felt her knees weaken, but she forced herself to remain standing. "I need work," she said. "I need a place to stay. I can clean, I can cook, I can sew. I am a hard worker." "No God-fearing household will take you in," the preacher said. "You carry darkness with you, Mrs. Brennan. You are a warning, a cautionary tale of what happens when a woman fails in her sacred duty to her husband. I suggest you move along to another town where your reputation has not preceded you." Katherine wanted to scream at him, wanted to tell him about the nights Thomas had woken her with his shouting, reliving battles that had ended 13 years ago. She wanted to explain how she had held him while he wept, how she had hidden the guns and the knives, how she had begged him to see a doctor. She wanted them all to know that she had loved her husband with everything she had, and it still had not been enough to save him. But she said none of this. She simply nodded, picked up the small bag that contained everything she owned in this world, and started walking toward the edge of town. She made it about 50 yards before her vision went dark, and she fell face first into the dusty street. Nathan Jameson was bringing in a string of wild horses when he saw the woman collapse. He had been gone from Bentonville for 3 weeks, working a contract for the army that had taken him deep into the Ozark Mountains. And he was tired, dusty, and looking forward to a hot meal and a bed that did not move beneath him. But he was also his mother's son, and she had raised him to help people who needed helping. He swung down from his horse and jogged over to where the woman lay motionless in the street. A crowd had formed, but no one was actually helping her. They just stood there, watching like she was a curiosity rather than a human being in distress. "Someone get Doc Brennan," Nathan called out as he knelt beside her. "She is burning up with fever." "That is the widow Brennan," a woman said from the crowd. The one whose husband killed himself. Reverend Morrison just sent her away. Nathan looked up sharply. I do not care if she is Jesse James himself. She needs help. He scooped the unconscious woman into his arms, surprised by how light she was, and carried her toward Doc Brennan's office. Behind him, he heard Reverend Morrison's voice calling out something about harboring sinners, but Nathan ignored him. The preacher was a sanctimonious windbag who had made life miserable for half the town with his constant moralizing, and Nathan had learned long ago to tune him out. Doc Brennan met him at the door, his weathered face creasing with concern. Bring her in back, he said. Put her on the examination table. Nathan laid her down as gently as he could. In the better light of the doctor's office, he could see how pale she was beneath the dust and sunburn, how her dress was stained with old blood and torn at the hem. Her dark hair had come loose from its pins and spread across the table like a dark river. Dehydration and exhaustion, Doc Brennan said after a quick examination. Maybe some fever too. Where did she come from? I was hoping you could tell me, Nathan said. Someone mentioned she was a widow. Doc Brennan's expression grew guarded. Katherine Brennan. Her husband was Thomas Brennan, a rancher up near Fayetteville. He killed himself about a week ago. There was some talk that maybe she had done it, but the marshal cleared her of any wrongdoing. Still, you know how people are. They need someone to blame, and they chose her. They usually choose the woman, Doc Brennan said quietly. He began cleaning Katherine's face with a damp cloth. I knew Thomas during the war. We served in the same regiment. He came back different like a lot of men did. If anyone drove him to his death, it was not his wife. It was what he saw at Pea Ridge and Prairie Grove. Nathan looked down at the unconscious woman. Her face was delicate, almost fragile, with high cheekbones and a generous mouth. Even unconscious and ill, she was beautiful in a way that made his chest tighten. Will she be all right? He asked. If we can get fluids into her and break the fever, yes. But she needs rest and food and care, and I am not sure where she is going to get any of that. Reverend Morrison has already poisoned the well against her. Doc Brennan paused, studying Nathan carefully. Why do you care? You do not even know her. Nathan did not have a good answer to that. He only knew that when he had seen her lying in the street, something inside him had responded with a fierce protectiveness that made no logical sense. Someone should care, he said finally. Well, I can keep her here for a day or two while she recovers, but after that she will need somewhere to go. Do you know anyone who might take her in? Nathan thought about it. His ranch was small but profitable, and he had been thinking about hiring help now that his horse breeding operation was expanding. He had a small cabin on the property that had belonged to his parents before they built the main house. It was empty now, but it was sound and weatherproof. I might, he said slowly. Let me think on it. Katherine woke to the sound of rain on a tin roof and the smell of clean sheets. For a moment, she thought she was back at the ranch, that the last week had been a nightmare, that she would open her eyes and see Thomas standing at the window, watching the sunrise like he used to before the darkness took him completely. But then the memories came flooding back, and with them came the grief that sat like a stone in her chest. She opened her eyes to find herself in a small room with whitewashed walls and a single window. The bed she lay in was narrow but comfortable, and someone had changed her out of her ruined dress and into a clean nightgown. A pitcher of water sat on the bedside table, and her mouth was so dry she could barely swallow. She managed to pour herself a glass with shaking hands and drank it down in desperate gulps. The water was cool and sweet, and it seemed to clear some of the fog from her mind. The door opened, and an older man with kind eyes and a gray beard entered. "You are awake," he said with evident relief. "Good. You have been out for nearly 18 hours. I was starting to worry." "Where am I?" Catherine's voice came out as a rasp. "My office. I am Doc Brennan. You collapsed in the street yesterday afternoon. A young man named Nathan Jameson brought you to me." Katherine closed her eyes. "The preacher. He said I was damaged goods." "Reverend Morrison is a fool," Doc Brennan said bluntly. "And a cruel one at that. You are not damaged, Mrs. Brennan. You are grieving and exhausted, and you have been through something no person should have to endure, but you are not damaged." The kindness in his voice made tears spring to her eyes. "Thomas shot himself," she whispered. "I was in the next room and I did not hear anything until I found him the next morning. What kind of wife does not know when her husband is dying?" "The kind of wife who is human," Doc Brennan said gently. He pulled up a chair and sat beside her bed. "I knew Thomas. We served together during the war. What happened to him was not your fault. The war broke him, and sometimes broken things cannot be fixed no matter how hard we try. Everyone thinks I killed him. Some people think that because it is easier than accepting that sometimes good men do terrible things to themselves. But the marshal cleared you, and anyone with sense knows you are innocent." He paused. "Nathan Jameson asked about you. He wants to know if you would be willing to work for him at his ranch. He needs help with cooking and housekeeping, and he has a cabin you could live in. It would give you a fresh start." Catherine's first instinct was to refuse. The last thing she needed was to be indebted to a stranger, especially a man. But she had no money, no prospects, and nowhere to go. Pride was a luxury she could no longer afford. "Why would he help me?" she asked. "He does not know me." "I asked him the same thing," Doc Brennan said. "He said someone should care, and I think he meant it." Katherine thought about the preacher's words about being called damaged goods in front of half the town. She thought about the way everyone had stood and watched her collapse without lifting a finger to help. And then she thought about this Nathan Jameson, whoever he was, who had carried her to the doctor despite what people were saying about her. "I will meet him," she said, "but I make no promises." Nathan came to the doctor's office the next morning, his hat in his hands and his dark hair still damp from washing. He was a tall man with broad shoulders and sun-bronzed skin, and when he entered the room where Katherine was sitting up in bed, she felt her breath catch. He had kind eyes. That was the first thing she noticed. They were a deep brown, almost black, and they looked at her without judgment or suspicion. "Mrs. Brennan," he said, his voice low and respectful. "I am Nathan Jameson. Doc Brennan said he told you about my offer." "He did," Katherine said. She was still wearing the borrowed nightgown, and she felt exposed and vulnerable sitting there in bed while this stranger stood before her. "Why are you doing this? You do not know anything about me." "I know you needed help, and no one was giving it to you," Nathan said simply. "I know the preacher called you damaged goods, which tells me more about him than it does about you. And I know I need help running my ranch, and you need a job and a place to stay. Seems like we could help each other." "People will talk," Katherine said. "A widow living on a bachelor's ranch. It will cause a scandal." "Let them talk," Nathan said. "My mother always said that people who gossip have too much time on their hands and not enough troubles of their own. I do not care what Reverend Morrison or anyone else thinks. The question is whether you care." Katherine studied him carefully, looking for any sign of ulterior motives or hidden agendas. But all she saw was honesty and a straightforward kindness that was almost painful after the cruelty of the previous day. "What exactly would you expect from me?" she asked cautiously. "Cooking, cleaning, laundry, mending, basic housekeeping. I am gone most days working with the horses, and I usually eat whatever I can cook over a fire, which is not much. The house is a mess because I have no time to keep it up. You would have your own cabin, completely separate from the main house. I would pay you $20 a month plus room and board. $20 a month was a fair wage, more than fair really. Katherine knew she would be hard-pressed to find anything better, especially with her reputation. I am a hard worker, she said, and I keep a clean house. But I need you to understand something. I am not looking for a husband. I am not looking for anything except honest work and a chance to rebuild my life. If you are expecting anything more than what you just described, you need to tell me now. Nathan met her eyes steadily. I am expecting nothing more than a clean house and decent meals. You have my word on that, Mrs. Brennan. Something in his tone convinced her. Maybe it was desperation, or maybe it was instinct, but Katherine found herself nodding. All right, I will work for you. But if you prove to be anything other than what you are presenting yourself as, I will leave. I do not care if I have to walk to Texas. A small smile tugged at the corner of Nathan's mouth. Fair enough. When Doc Brennan says you are well enough to travel, I will take you out to the ranch and get you settled. He turned to leave, then paused at the door. Mrs. Brennan, for what it is worth, I am sorry about your husband. I lost my father 2 years ago, so I know something about grief. It is not an easy road. Before Katherine could respond, he was gone, leaving her alone with her thoughts and the first small spark of something that might have been hope. The Jameson Ranch sat in a valley about 5 miles outside Bentonville, surrounded by rolling hills covered in oak and hickory trees. The main house was a sturdy 2-story structure built from local stone and timber, and the barn and outbuildings were well maintained and organized. Katherine counted at least a dozen horses in the corral, beautiful animals with sleek coats and intelligent eyes. The cabin Nathan had mentioned sat about 100 yards from the main house, nestled under a massive oak tree. It was small but charming, with a covered porch and shuttered windows. Smoke curled from the chimney, and when Nathan opened the door, Katherine saw that he had already started a fire in the wood stove. I cleaned it out yesterday, he said, sounding almost embarrassed. It is not much, but it is solid. My parents lived here when they first homesteaded this land. After they built the main house, we used it for storage, but I cleared everything out. Katherine stepped inside and looked around. There was a main room with the wood stove, a table and 2 chairs, and a rocking chair by the window. A door led to a small bedroom with an iron frame bed covered in a colorful quilt. Everything was clean and simple and perfect. It is wonderful, she said softly. Thank you. Nathan shifted his weight, clearly uncomfortable with her gratitude. You will need supplies. Tomorrow I will take you into town and you can get whatever you need. Clothes, personal items, whatever. I will open a credit account for you at the general store. I can make do with what I have, Katherine said quickly. She did not want to be more indebted to this man than she already was. Mrs. Brennan, you arrived in town with one dress and it was covered in blood. You need clothes. You need shoes that fit properly. You need the things that will allow you to do your job. It is not charity. It is a business expense. He said it so matter-of-factly that Katherine could not argue. All right, thank you. The main house is unlocked. I will show you around now if you are feeling up to it, or we can wait until morning. Katherine's legs were still shaky from her illness, but she wanted to see what she was working with. Now is fine. The main house was exactly what she expected from a bachelor's home. The furniture was good quality but haphazardly arranged, and there was dust on every surface. The kitchen was equipped with a modern cast iron stove and good pots and pans, but the dishes were piled in the sink and the floor needed sweeping. Upstairs were 3 bedrooms, one clearly Nathan's and the other 2 empty except for basic furniture. My parents died 2 years ago, Nathan said as they walked through the rooms. Cholera outbreak. After that it was just me, and I have been focused on building up the horse breeding operation. Housekeeping kind of fell by the wayside. I can see that, Katherine said, running her finger along a dusty shelf. But it has good bones. Give me a week and I will have it set right. I do not doubt it. Nathan paused at the top of the stairs. I should tell you I am gone a lot. I have contracts with the army and with several ranches in the territory. Sometimes I am away for weeks at a time. You will be here alone during those periods. If that makes you uncomfortable, I can hire a woman from town to stay with you. Katherine thought about it. The isolation actually appealed to her. She had spent the last year surrounded by people who whispered about her husband's deteriorating mental state, who looked at her with pity or suspicion. The idea of being alone with her thoughts and her work sounded like paradise. I will be fine alone, she said. I am not afraid of solitude. Nathan nodded slowly. All right, but if you change your mind, just say the word. They went back downstairs and Nathan showed her the pantry, which was surprisingly well stocked. I buy in bulk when I go to town, he explained. Flour, sugar, coffee, salt, dried beans. The smokehouse has bacon and ham. There is a vegetable garden out back that has gone to weeds, but if you want to tend it, you are welcome to whatever it produces. I also have chickens for eggs, and I can usually bring down a deer or wild turkey when we need fresh meat. You are very self-sufficient, Katherine observed. Had to be. When it was just me, I learned to manage, but I will admit, I am tired of beans and bacon for every meal. I will do better than that, Katherine promised. Over the next week, Katherine threw herself into work with an intensity that bordered on desperate. She scrubbed the main house from top to bottom, washing windows and beating rugs and polishing every piece of furniture until it gleamed. She organized the kitchen, cleaned out the pantry, and baked bread that filled the house with warmth and comfort. Nathan stayed out of her way for the most part, working with his horses from dawn until dusk. But he came in for meals, and Katherine found herself looking forward to those quiet times at the kitchen table. He was not a talkative man, but when he did speak, his words were thoughtful and kind. He told her about growing up on the ranch, about learning to train horses from his father, about his mother's garden that Katherine was now bringing back to life. He talked about the war years, when he had been too young to fight but old enough to understand what was happening. He mentioned friends who had gone off to battle and never returned. Katherine found herself talking too, carefully at first, then with increasing ease. She told him about growing up in St. Louis, about meeting Thomas at a church social when she was 19 and he was 21, fresh back from the war. She talked about how charming he had been in the beginning, how he had courted her with poetry and flowers and promises of a beautiful life together. When did it change? Nathan asked one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset. Katherine was quiet for a long moment. It was gradual. He would have nightmares and wake up screaming. He started drinking to quiet the memories. He became paranoid, convinced that people were plotting against him. I tried to help, but I did not know how, and he would not see a doctor because he said there was nothing wrong with him. That must have been hard to live with. The hardest part was watching the man I loved disappear a little more each day. By the end, he was a stranger wearing Thomas's face. She wiped at her eyes. I am sorry. You do not need to hear all this. I do not mind, Nathan said quietly. Sometimes talking about things makes them easier to carry. Katherine looked at him in the golden light of the setting sun. Why are you so kind to me? You could have left me in that street. You could have listened to the preacher and sent me away. Why did you help me? Nathan was quiet for so long that Katherine thought he was not going to answer. Then he said, My mother was sick for a long time before she died. Cholera took her fast, but before that she had been suffering from some kind of growth inside her. She was in terrible pain, but she never complained. The day before the cholera came, she told me that the hardest thing about suffering is that people stop seeing you as a person. They see the illness or the pain or the problem. They forget there is a human being in there who still has hopes and dreams and feelings. He turned to look at Katherine. When I saw you in the street that day, I saw a person who needed help, not damaged goods, not a cautionary tale. Just a woman who had been through something terrible and was trying to survive. I helped you because it was the right thing to do. It is as simple as that. Katherine felt something shift inside her chest, like a door opening that she had thought was locked forever. You are a good man, Nathan Jameson. I am just a man, he said, trying to do right by people when I can. As the weeks passed, Katherine found herself healing in ways she had not expected. The physical work was demanding but satisfying, and the routine of daily chores gave her life structure and purpose. She planted a new vegetable garden and tended it carefully, watching green shoots push through the dark soil. She mended Nathan's clothes and made curtains for the windows and cooked meals that made him close his eyes in appreciation. But it was more than just the work that was healing her. It was Nathan himself. He was different from Thomas in every way that mattered. Where Thomas had been volatile and unpredictable, Nathan was steady and calm. Where Thomas had demanded her attention and devotion, Nathan respected her space and independence. He never raised his voice, never made her feel small or inadequate, never blamed her for things beyond her control. And slowly, carefully, Katherine found herself drawn to him. It started with small things. The way he smiled when he came in for breakfast and found fresh biscuits waiting. The way he always thanked her for every meal, every mended shirt, every kindness. The way he brought her wildflowers from the meadow without making a fuss about it. The way he listened when she talked, really listened, like her words mattered. One evening in late September, Nathan came back from town with news. Reverend Morrison is leaving Bentonville, he said as they ate dinner. Apparently the church elders decided his sermons were too harsh and his attitude was driving people away. They asked him to resign. Katherine looked up in surprise. Where will he go? I do not know and I do not care. Good riddance to him. Nathan paused. The new preacher is a younger man, supposedly more compassionate. I thought you might like to know that you would be welcome at services again if you wanted to go. Katherine had not been to church since Thomas died. The thought of walking into that building, of facing the people who had whispered about her, made her stomach clench with anxiety. I am not ready for that, she said quietly. That is fine, Nathan said. I just wanted you to know the option was there. No pressure. But the news about Reverend Morrison stirred something in Katherine. He said I was damaged goods, she said suddenly, in front of everyone. He said I drove Thomas to kill himself because I was not a good enough wife. Nathan's jaw tightened. He was wrong. Was he? Katherine set down her fork. I have asked myself that question 1,000 times. What if I had been more patient? What if I had tried harder to get him help? What if I had seen the signs earlier? Katherine. It was the first time Nathan had used her given name, and the sound of it in his voice made her breath catch. You cannot save someone who does not want to be saved. You cannot fix someone who will not admit they are broken. You loved your husband, and you did everything you could for him. His death was not your fault, and you are not damaged. You are strong and brave and beautiful, and anyone who says otherwise is a fool. Tears spilled down Katherine's cheeks. You really believe that? I know it, Nathan said with absolute certainty. I have watched you rebuild your life from nothing. I have seen you face down your grief and keep going even when it would have been easier to give up. You are one of the strongest people I have ever met, and you are perfect just the way you are now. The words hung in the air between them, charged with meaning. Katherine stared at Nathan across the table, seeing him clearly for the first time. Seeing the way he looked at her, with warmth and respect and something deeper that made her heart race. "Nathan," she whispered, and then she could not say anything else because he had pushed back from the table and crossed to her side, taking her hands in his. "I know it is too soon," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I know you are still grieving and you need time. But I have to tell you that I care about you, Katherine. More than I probably should, more than is wise. You have turned this house into a home, and you have turned my life into something worth living. And if you never feel the same way, I will accept that. But I needed you to know." Katherine looked up at him, this good man who had shown her nothing but kindness, who had defended her when the whole town had turned against her, who had given her a reason to believe in herself again. And she realized with startling clarity that she cared for him too. That somewhere between the cooking and cleaning and quiet conversations, she had fallen in love with Nathan Jameson. "It is not too soon," she said, standing so she could face him properly. "Or maybe it is, but I do not care. I care about you too, Nathan. I did not think I would ever feel this way about anyone again, but you have shown me that there is still goodness in this world, still kindness and hope and possibility." Nathan cupped her face in his calloused hands, his touch infinitely gentle. "I do not want to rush you. We can take this as slow as you need." "I do not want slow," Katherine said. "I have spent too much of my life being careful and afraid. I want to be brave. I want to take a chance on something good." And then she kissed him, and it was like coming home after a long journey. Nathan's arms came around her, holding her close but not too tight, giving her room to breathe, room to choose. The kiss was sweet and tender and full of promise, and when they finally pulled apart, Katherine was smiling through her tears. "I love you," Nathan said, resting his forehead against hers. "I think I have loved you since the moment I picked you up out of that street. I just needed time to understand it." "I love you too," Katherine said, and the words felt like healing, like a benediction, like the beginning of something beautiful and new. They took their time with the courtship, wanting to do things properly despite their declarations of love. Nathan started coming into town with Katherine on her errands, his presence a quiet statement that she was under his protection. The townspeople noticed, of course, and there was gossip, but it was the curious kind rather than the vicious sort. Without Reverend Morrison fanning the flames of judgment, people were willing to reconsider their opinions of the widow Brennan. Doc Brennan was pleased when they told him about their relationship. "I hoped you two might find each other," he said with a knowing smile. "You are good for each other." Katherine started attending church again in October, sitting beside Nathan in the pew and holding her head high despite the stares. The new preacher, a kind-faced man named Reverend Williams, welcomed her warmly and made a point of speaking to her after the service. He never mentioned Thomas or the circumstances of his death. He simply treated her like any other member of the congregation, and gradually others followed his lead. By November, Nathan and Katherine were talking about marriage. They were sitting by the fireplace in the main house one evening, Katherine mending a shirt while Nathan oiled a saddle when he brought it up. "I would like to marry you," he said without preamble, "if you will have me." Katherine's needle stilled. "Are you asking or telling?" "Asking." "Always asking. You can say no and I will respect that. But I want you to know that I want to spend my life with you. I want to wake up every morning knowing you are here. I want to build a future together, have children if God blesses us with them, grow old watching the sunset from this porch." Katherine set down her mending and moved to sit beside him on the floor. "I want that too, all of it, but I need to know you understand what you are taking on. I was married before. Some people will always see me as second-hand goods, as a woman with a questionable past." "Let them," Nathan said fiercely. "I do not care about your past. I care about your present and your future, and I want to be part of both." "Then yes," Katherine said, smiling through the tears that seemed to come so easily these days. "Yes, I will marry you, Nathan Jameson." They were married in December, on a crisp cold day when the sky was a brilliant blue and frost sparkled on the grass. Reverend Williams performed the ceremony in the small church, with Doc Brennan standing as Nathan's witness and the doctor's wife standing for Katherine. The church was half full, a mixture of Nathan's friends and neighbors who had come to wish them well. Katherine wore a dress she had sewn herself from blue wool that matched her eyes. Nathan wore his best suit, his dark hair slicked back and his face glowing with happiness. When he slipped the simple gold band onto her finger and promised to love and cherish her for the rest of their days, Katherine felt the last pieces of her broken heart slot back into place. At the reception afterward, held in the church hall with food prepared by half the women in town, people came up to offer their congratulations. Some were shy about it, clearly uncertain how to approach the woman they had once shunned, but Katherine met them all with grace and kindness. She was Nathan's wife now, and that gave her a new identity, a fresh start. "I am happy for you," a woman named Sarah told her as they stood by the punch bowl. "I am sorry I was not kinder to you when you first came to town. I let fear and gossip guide my actions, and that was wrong." "Thank you for saying that," Katherine said, touching the woman's hand. "It means more than you know." As the afternoon wore on and the celebration continued, Katherine found herself standing by the window, looking out at the winter landscape. Nathan came up behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist, pulling her back against his chest. "What are you thinking about?" he murmured against her hair. "How different my life looks now compared to 6 months ago," Katherine said. "When I walked into Bentonville, I thought my life was over. I thought I would never be happy again, never feel safe or loved or whole. And then you picked me up out of the street and everything changed." "You changed your own life," Nathan said. "You had the courage to accept help, to start over, to take a chance on love again. I just gave you the opportunity. You did the hard work." Katherine turned in his arms to face him. "We did it together. That is how it works, is it not? We help each other, we support each other, we build something better than either of us could have created alone." "That is exactly how it works," Nathan agreed and kissed her softly. They left the reception as the sun was setting, riding back to the ranch in the wagon with blankets wrapped around them against the cold. The house looked warm and welcoming with lamplight glowing in the windows, and Katherine felt a profound sense of homecoming as Nathan helped her down from the wagon. "Welcome home, Mrs. Jameson," he said, sweeping her up into his arms and carrying her across the threshold. Katherine laughed, the sound bright and free. "I am home. Finally, truly home." That night, as they lay together in the big bed in Nathan's room, which was now their room, Katherine felt a peace she had not experienced in years. Nathan held her gently, his body warm against hers, and they talked in whispers about their dreams for the future. "I want children," Nathan said. 3 or 4 if we are blessed. I want this house to be full of laughter and noise and life." "I want that too," Katherine said. "I want to fill the empty bedrooms, to watch our children grow up strong and happy. I want to give them the kind of love and stability I did not have in my first marriage." "You will be a wonderful mother," Nathan said with certainty. "You have so much love to give, Katherine." "I see it in everything you do." Katherine nestled closer to him, feeling safe and cherished in a way she had never quite felt before. "I love you," she whispered. "Thank you for seeing me when everyone else looked away. Thank you for believing in me when I had stopped believing in myself." "Always," Nathan promised. "I will always see you, always believe in you, always love you exactly as you are." The first year of their marriage was full of joy and hard work. Katherine transformed the house into a true home, adding touches of beauty and comfort in every room. She planted flowers in the spring and tended her vegetable garden with care, filling the pantry with preserved goods for the winter. She made friends in town, slowly building relationships with women who had once shunned her, but now welcomed her as one of their own. Nathan's horse breeding business thrived, and he gained a reputation throughout Arkansas and into Missouri for producing quality animals. He still took contracts that required him to travel, but he never stayed away longer than necessary. He always came home to Katherine, and every reunion was sweet. In the fall of their first year of marriage, Katherine discovered she was expecting a child. She told Nathan one evening as they sat on the porch watching the leaves change color, and the look of pure joy on his face made her heart overflow. "A baby," he said, his voice filled with wonder. "We are going to have a baby. Are you happy?" Katherine asked, though she could see the answer in his eyes. "Happy does not begin to cover it," Nathan said, pulling her into his arms. "I am grateful, I am amazed, I am terrified and excited all at once. When? Late spring, I think. Maybe early summer." Nathan placed his hand over her still flat stomach. "Hello in there, little one. This is your father. I cannot wait to meet you." Katherine covered his hand with hers, tears of happiness streaming down her face. "We are going to be a family." "We already are a family," Nathan corrected gently. "But now we are going to be a bigger one." The pregnancy was not easy. Katherine suffered from terrible sickness in the early months, and there were days when she could barely keep food down. Nathan hired a woman from town to help with the heavy work, and he took on more of the cooking and cleaning himself. He was patient and attentive, bringing her cold compresses when she felt feverish and holding her hair back when she was sick. "I am sorry," Katherine said one particularly bad morning as she leaned weakly against him. "I am not much used to you like this." "You are growing our child," Nathan said firmly. "That is the most important work there is. Everything else can wait." As winter gave way to spring, Katherine's sickness finally eased and she began to bloom. Her belly grew round and firm, and she felt the baby move inside her, little flutters at first and then stronger kicks. Nathan loved to feel the baby move, pressing his hand to her stomach and laughing with delight whenever he felt a nudge. "Strong baby," he would say, "just like the mother." The baby came in early June, on a warm day when the air smelled of honeysuckle and new grass. Katherine's labor was long and difficult, stretching through the night and into the next day. Doc Brennan attended her, along with his wife who served as midwife, and Nathan stayed by her side the entire time, holding her hand and murmuring encouragement. "I cannot do this," Katherine gasped during a particularly brutal contraction. "It is too much, Nathan. I cannot." "You can," Nathan said, wiping her face with a cool cloth. "You are the strongest person I know, Katherine. You survived things that would have broken most people. You can survive this too. I believe in you." And somehow, his belief gave her strength. Katherine bore down with everything she had, and finally, as the sun was setting on the second day of labor, she heard the most beautiful sound in the world, her baby's first cry. "It is a boy," Doc Brennan announced, holding up the squalling infant. "A healthy, strong boy." Nathan cut the cord with trembling hands, and then the baby was placed on Katherine's chest, warm and slippery and perfect. She looked down at her son, at his dark hair and screwed-up face and tiny, perfect fingers, and felt love unlike anything she had ever known. "Hello, little one," she whispered. "I am your mama. I have been waiting so long to meet you." Nathan leaned over them both, his eyes bright with tears. "He is perfect," he said hoarsely. "You are perfect. Thank you, Katherine. Thank you for this gift." They named him Noah Jameson, and he became the center of their world. Nathan proved to be a devoted father, walking the floor with Noah at night when he was fussy, changing diapers without complaint, and singing lullabies in his rough voice that somehow always soothed the baby. Katherine watched him with their son and fell in love with him all over again. "You are a natural at this," she told him one night as she watched him rock Noah to sleep. "He makes it easy," Nathan said, gazing down at the baby with awe. "I never knew I could love someone this much, this instantly. It is like my heart grew bigger the moment he was born." "Mine too," Katherine said softly. As Noah grew from infant to toddler, the house filled with the sounds of childhood. He was a happy, curious child with his father's dark eyes and his mother's smile. He loved the horses and would toddle out to the barn every morning to see them, laughing with delight when they nuzzled his chubby hands. 2 years after Noah was born, Katherine gave birth to a daughter they named Nora Katherine Jameson. She had blonde hair like Katherine's mother and a stubborn streak that kept them all on their toes. Noah adored his little sister, always wanting to help take care of her, and Katherine often found him singing to her the same lullabies Nathan had sung to him. Life settled into a comfortable rhythm. The ranch continued to prosper, and Nathan built a larger barn and added more acreage for grazing. Katherine's garden became the envy of the county, and she sold her excess produce and preserves at the town market. They went to church every Sunday as a family, and Katherine served on the church committee that organized social events. The whispers about Katherine's past had long since faded, replaced by respect for the woman she had become. She was known now not as the damaged widow who had driven her husband to suicide, but as Nathan Jameson's capable wife, as Noah and Nora's loving mother, as a woman of strength and grace who had overcome tragedy to build a beautiful life. Sometimes, though, on quiet evenings when the children were asleep and she and Nathan sat together on the porch, Katherine thought about Thomas. She thought about the young man she had married before the war had stolen his peace. She thought about the love they had shared in the beginning and about how hard she had tried to save him. "You still think about him?" Nathan asked one such evening, seeming to read her thoughts. "Sometimes," Katherine admitted, not with pain anymore, but with a kind of sad acceptance. "He was ill, and I could not save him. But that does not mean our marriage was meaningless, or that what I felt for him was not real. It just was not enough, because sometimes love is not enough to fix what is broken." "I am glad you can see it that way now," Nathan said. "For a long time you blamed yourself. You helped me see the truth," Katherine said. "You showed me that I was not damaged, that I deserved love and happiness and a second chance. You saved me, Nathan." "We saved each other," Nathan corrected, pulling her close. "I was just going through the motions before you came into my life. You gave me purpose, gave me a family, gave me a reason to build something lasting. We are partners, Katherine. Always have been, always will be." Katherine smiled and rested her head on his shoulder, listening to the night sounds of crickets and distant cattle. Through the window, she could see the lamplight in the children's room where Noah and Nora slept peacefully. This was her life now. This beautiful, imperfect, joyful life. When Noah was 5 and Nora was 3, Katherine gave birth to twins, a boy and a girl they named Nicholas and Nina. The house was suddenly very full and very loud, and there were days when Katherine felt like she was drowning in laundry and diapers and the constant needs of 4 small children. But she would not have changed it for anything. Nathan hired more help for the ranch so he could spend more time with his family. He taught Noah to ride when the boy turned 6, patiently leading him around the corral on a gentle mare until Noah had the confidence to ride on his own. He took Nora on walks through the meadow, teaching her the names of wildflowers and letting her pick bouquets for her mother. And he spent hours with the twins, who had inherited his dark hair and Catherine's blue eyes, playing simple games and telling stories. "You are an amazing father," Katherine told him one evening after they had finally gotten all 4 children settled for the night. "I watch you with them, and I think about how lucky they are to have you." "I am the lucky one," Nathan said. "Every single day, I wake up and thank God for this life, for you, for our children. I never imagined I could be this happy, Katherine." "Neither did I," Katherine said. "When I walked into Bentonville 7 years ago, I thought my life was over. I thought I would spend the rest of my days alone, marked by tragedy and shame. I never dreamed I would find love again, let alone a love like this." Nathan took her hands in his. "The preacher called you damaged goods. I called you perfect just the way you were. And every day since, you have proven me right. You are perfect, Katherine. Not because you are without scars, but because you turned those scars into strength. You took the worst thing that ever happened to you and you refused to let it define you. That is courage. That is beauty. That is perfection." Katherine kissed him then, pouring all her love and gratitude into that kiss. "I love you, Nathan Jameson. You are my second chance, my great love, my home. And you are mine," Nathan said, "today and always." The years continued to pass, marked by the milestones of their children's lives. Noah grew into a tall, serious boy who shared his father's love of horses. Nora was bright and curious, always reading and asking questions. The twins were inseparable, creating elaborate games and getting into mischief that kept Katherine on her toes. When Noah turned 10, Nathan began teaching him the business side of the ranch, showing him how to evaluate horses and negotiate contracts. "This will be yours someday," Nathan told his son. "You and your siblings will inherit everything your mother and I have built. I want you to be ready to carry it forward." Katherine started teaching Nora and Nina to garden and preserve food, passing on the skills she had learned. "A woman needs to know how to take care of herself and her family," she told her daughters. "Never depend entirely on anyone else for your survival." Nicholas showed an early talent for music, and Katherine bought him a second-hand fiddle that he learned to play with surprising skill. Soon, he was providing entertainment at church socials and community gatherings, and the pride on Nathan's face whenever he watched his son perform made Katherine's heart swell. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Nathan surprised Katherine with a trip to St. Louis. They left the children with Doc Brennan and his wife, and took the train north, staying in a fine hotel and eating in restaurants and walking the streets where Katherine had grown up. "This is where I met Thomas," Katherine said as they stood outside the church where she had been married the first time. "I was 19 years old and I thought I knew everything about love. I had no idea what was coming." "Do you regret it?" Nathan asked gently. "Marrying him?" Katherine thought about it carefully. "I regret the pain he suffered. I regret that I could not help him. But I do not regret the marriage itself, because it taught me things I needed to know. It taught me strength, resilience, compassion. It taught me that love alone is not always enough. And all of those lessons made me into the woman I am today, the woman you fell in love with. So no, I do not regret it. It was part of my journey to you." Nathan pulled her close, holding her in the shadow of the church. "You are wise, Katherine Jameson. That is one of the 1,000 things I love about you." They spent 3 days in St. Louis, and it was wonderful, but Katherine found herself eager to get home to the children and the ranch. That was where her heart lived now. Not in the past, but in the present and future she and Nathan were building together. When they returned home, the children ran out to meet them, talking over each other in their excitement to share everything that had happened while they were gone. Katherine gathered them all close, breathing in the smell of sunshine and childhood, and felt complete. "Mama, did you bring us presents?" Nina asked, and Katherine laughed. "Maybe a few small things," she said, pulling wrapped packages from her bag. "But the best present is being home with all of you." As the children tore into their gifts, Nathan wrapped his arms around Katherine from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. "Home," he said softly. "That is what you made for me, Katherine, a place I never want to leave." "We made it together," Katherine said, leaning back against him. "Everything we have, everything we are, we built it side by side." The children grew and changed, becoming individuals with their own dreams and personalities. Noah expressed interest in studying veterinary medicine, wanting to help animals beyond just training them. Nora talked about becoming a teacher, wanting to help children learn. Nicholas was determined to see more of the world, to travel and play his music in big cities. Nina, the youngest girl, wanted nothing more than to stay on the ranch and breed horses like her father. Nathan and Katherine supported them all, even when their dreams took them in unexpected directions. "We will give them roots and wings," Nathan said. "A foundation to stand on and the freedom to fly wherever they need to go." When Noah turned 18, he enrolled in a veterinary program in Little Rock. It was hard to watch him leave, but Katherine was proud of the man he had become. Tall and steady like his father, with a kind heart and a brilliant mind, Noah was going to do great things. "He will come back," Nathan assured Katherine as they watched Noah's train pull away from the station. "The ranch is in his blood. He will come back when he is ready." And Nathan was right. Noah graduated with honors 3 years later and returned to Bentonville to set up a practice. He treated not just horses but all kinds of animals, and he became an invaluable resource to the ranching community. He married a lovely young woman named Emma, and they built a house on a corner of the Jameson property, close enough to visit but far enough for independence. Nora did become a teacher, taking a position at the Bentonville schoolhouse. She married a kind man who worked at the bank, and they gave Katherine and Nathan their first grandchild, a daughter named Katherine after her grandmother. Nicholas left for Chicago to pursue his music, and though he did not return to live permanently, he visited often and always played his fiddle at family gatherings. He sent letters full of stories about the places he went and the people he met, and Katherine saved everyone. Nina stayed on the ranch, just as she had always said she would. She learned everything Nathan could teach her about breeding and training horses, and by the time she was 20, she was running much of the day-to-day operation. She married late, at 28, to a cowboy named Samuel who shared her love of horses and the land. As Nathan and Katherine grew older, they gradually stepped back from the active management of the ranch, letting Noah and Nina take over. They spent their days tending the garden, playing with their growing collection of grandchildren, and sitting on the porch watching the sunset. "You remember the day we met?" Katherine asked one evening as they rocked in their chairs, their hands clasped between them. "When you picked me up out of the street, of course," Nathan said. "You were burning with fever and wearing a blood-stained dress, and I thought you were the most beautiful thing I had ever seen." Katherine laughed. "You could not have thought that. I was a mess." "You were beautiful," Nathan insisted. "Not because of how you looked, but because of what I saw in you. Strength and courage and a will to survive. I saw all of that in one glance, and I knew I had to help you." "The preacher called me damaged goods," Katherine said, remembering that terrible day. "He said no God-fearing household would take me in." "And I said you were perfect just the way you were," Nathan reminded her. "And I was right. You are perfect, Katherine. You always have been, not despite your scars, but because of them. Because they prove you are a survivor, a fighter, a woman who refuses to be broken." Katherine squeezed his hand, feeling the familiar calluses and strength in his grip. "We have had a good life, have we not? The best life," Nathan agreed. "Better than I ever could have imagined. 4 children, 9 grandchildren so far, a thriving ranch, and 52 years of marriage to the woman I love. I am a wealthy man, Katherine Jameson." 52 years, Katherine marveled. "It seems like both forever and no time at all." They sat in comfortable silence as the sun sank below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and purple. In the distance, they could hear children laughing as Noah's and Nina's families gathered for the weekly Sunday dinner. The house that had once been so empty was now full of life and love. "Thank you," Katherine said softly, "for seeing me when everyone else looked away, for believing in me when I had stopped believing in myself, for loving me exactly as I was, scars and all." "Thank you," Nathan countered, "for taking a chance on a lonely cowboy, for turning a house into a home, for giving me a family and a purpose and a reason to wake up grateful every single morning. You saved my life, Katherine. In every way that matters, you saved my life." As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Katherine and Nathan remained on their porch, holding hands and watching their family gather. The damaged widow and the kind cowboy, who had found each other in the dusty streets of Bentonville and built a love story for the ages. They lived many more years together, each day a gift they never took for granted. And when Nathan finally passed away at the age of 87, peacefully in his sleep with Katherine beside him, she grieved deeply but without regret. They had lived fully, loved completely, and created a legacy that would endure through their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. Katherine followed him 5 years later, at 89. Surrounded by her family in the house she and Nathan had filled with so much love. Her last words were, "He called me perfect, and with him I was." They were buried side by side in the Bentonville cemetery, under a large oak tree with a view of the valley where they had built their life together. The headstone, paid for by their children, bore a simple inscription, "Nathan Jameson and Katherine Jameson. Partners in life, united in love, together in eternity." And in Bentonville, for generations after, people told the story of the preacher who called her damaged goods and the cowboy who called her perfect just the way she was, and how their love had proven that sometimes the greatest treasures are found in the most unexpected places.